There we go. Apologies for that. Thank you, Joe. So again, welcome everybody. And we are here today with some very special people. Typically we do our fiscal year 25 lab ADA accessibility webinar. But today we're joined by Executive Director John McEwen from the New Jersey Theater Alliance, New Jersey Cultural Access Network. And he is the gold standard and gold bar on all things accessibility and ADA related. So we're so thrilled to have him here to kind of go through our lab plan and programming. So again, welcome to the fiscal year 2025 Americans with Disabilities Act ADA and Accessibility to Facilities Programming webinar. It's a mouthful. And reason it's so important that you're here today is that this is, we take accessibility very seriously when it comes to programming and when it comes to our amazing nonprofit organizations. So we just want everybody to be on the same page and to have the access, the resources, the knowledge of where you should be at when you are doing the application and your programming. And your ADA plan, which we're going to go through, and questions to the application constitute 20% of your total lab score. So that's probably one of the highest we've seen in the state, especially for one of our county local arts grants. So it's something that, we want everybody to have the knowledge on. So again, thank you so much for being here. I want to introduce a couple special people. Those of you might know Mr. Joe Wax, who's our program coordinator for all things local arts related, all things arts related for Hudson County. And he runs this program and spearheads this program as well. And then many of you have also worked with Rosa Mendel, who is our program development specialist for our local arts and education programming. And she also happens to be our ADA expert within the office and facilitates all things accessibility related for our office. So without further ado, I will kick it off to Executive Director John McEwen. And thanks again for being here. And we'll go through, obviously you can share questions in the chat. And John, you can let us know how you want to run the presentation with questions at the end, or if you'll pause.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gina, so much, and so great to be with you all this morning. So we're going to spend about a good 90 minutes. We might go slightly over, but we're going to spend a good 90 minutes together going over accessibility and what your organization should be thinking of. What I do want to just have you all keep in mind is that this, becoming an accessible organization is a journey. People don't expect things to happen overnight. We're always learning. I've been in this work for a few decades now, and I'm always still learning. So I just want us to just have that as a mindset, that this work is a journey. But the whole purpose of having a plan is that it's a tool, it's a roadmap for yourself and your organization, just to show that you're moving forward. We want to ensure that our facilities and our programming is available to everyone. And the plan allows you to have a roadmap, to do some check-in with yourselves, hold your organization accountable as you continue to move forward to make changes and improvements towards accessibility. The plan is also very helpful if there's a change at your organization. There's a lot of turnover in our field, and sometimes when somebody new comes in, you want to make sure the good work that you're doing already in this area, somebody can come in, take a look at your plan, and use that as a guide to keep your good work going. So I just want to share some of those thoughts with you. I have a PowerPoint, which we're going to go through, and then I'll stop periodically just to see if there's any questions. And at the end of the PowerPoint presentation, I will be bringing up the Hudson County's ADA plan sheet that you do need to complete and submit. And we'll go through each of those sections as well and see if there's any questions with regards to the worksheet that you do need to submit. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. And can you all see my screen? Yes? Okay. So I just want to make sure that we all just do a quick access check. I always like to do that in the beginning of any presentation, just to make sure that your technology is working, that you're in a comfortable spot for you to completely engage and participate in the conversation. So I'm hoping everybody's good, and if there are any technical difficulties or anything, you could certainly, and you have a question there, you could certainly let us know. But just want to do that check and make sure everybody is in a position to fully participate. I also like to just go over some quick community agreements, because I am going to stop periodically for questions and conversations. So please, when you do chat and share, it's okay to not have a complete formed thought. We call that speaking in rough draft. So please, if you do have a question or a comment, if it's just sort of percolating and it hasn't been fully baked yet, that's okay. So please don't let that cause any hesitation in you asking the question or making a comment. This is a safe space. If you have a personal story or situation that you want to share as it relates to accessibility, maybe a barrier that your organization is facing, it's fine. Let's just know that this is a safe space to share with each other, and that the learnings that we gain from today, that can leave this space. We want to hold ourselves and each other accountable for our words and our actions today. Also, make sure that some people are a little bit more forthcoming and more comfortable coming forward with questions and comments. So we just want to know that when to come forward, but also when to pull back, and make sure that we're giving room and space for everyone to fully participate. And everybody has different experiences, and they're all valid. So we want to keep that in mind as we are in this learning space together today. So I know a lot of you are off screen, which is fine, but hopefully if everybody will accept these community agreements for our time together. Thank you. So we're going to talk a little bit about disability facts and figures today, the importance of language. I think it's very important to just have an understanding of the constituency that we're looking to serve. Also, this work is an organizational priority. You might be the point person at your organization with regards to accessibility, but that doesn't mean you're the only person. So we're going to talk about why this is so important that you get all of your colleagues involved in accessibility. We're going to talk about different elements of ADA planning. And of course, there's many great resources out there. And as I mentioned, I'm gonna stop periodically for some questions and comments. So I think you've probably heard a lot of these words, equality and equity, tossed around, and there's definitely a difference. And this is I think just a wonderful graph that I put up here, where it indicates with equality, everybody gets if you can see that, everybody gets the same, in this case, the same bicycle, right? Even though that same bicycle may not be appropriate necessarily for each individual, the equality is that they're all getting the same bicycle to take a ride. But equity, if you look at that graphic, each of them can participate, keeping in mind their unique need in terms of the unique bicycle that would fit their need in order to participate. So if you see the tall individual, he needs a bicycle for the long legs, right? Then you can see the smaller individual needs a smaller bike to participate in the bike ride. That's equity. So there is a big difference, and we're all striving for equity, right? Because we want everyone to fully participate in our programs, but also keeping in mind that these are individuals that we're working with. And we want to be able to provide accommodations and services that meet that individual's particular needs. So I'm just going to pause here for a moment and just see if there's any questions or comments on this graph.
John, we did have a wonderful comment from Rolando. He's saying that's the best visual he's seen on the difference between equality and equity. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. Yes, this is there's several graphs out there, but in our work, we recently found this maybe a year ago now, and I think this is one of the better ones to demonstrate the difference of the two. So thank you for that. All right. So let's just talk about the constituency that we're all looking to serve, because I think it's really important to know that about 61 million Americans that's about 27% of the population, or 1 in 4 individuals has a disability. So it's a large number of our population. And according to the US Census, projections for 2030, people 65 years and older will outnumber children. So our population, as we all know, we're getting older, we're living longer. And as we live longer, in order to participate, sometimes there might be some services and accommodations that need to be provided. And I think this is also interesting, the labor of statistics, that only 21.3% of Americans over the age of 16 with disabilities were working actively. So a very high unemployment rate among people with disabilities. And also, disabled people represent the world's largest minority. And 30% of the nation's families have at least one member with a disability. This is also a group that any one of us can join at any one time. Either we could all experience a temporary disability or a permanent disability. So I just think it's important to keep these numbers in mind when we think about the constituency that we're looking to serve as it relates to making our programs and services accessible to people with disabilities. But it's also important to keep in mind that people with disabilities have income. It's estimated there's a combined income of over $1 trillion, right? With 220 billion in discretionary income. Because I think a lot of people think that people with disabilities don't necessarily have the resources to participate, perhaps, in a cultural activity, when that's not the case at all. And disability is the most underreported community in our arts and entertainment community. So if you probably see a lot of times on television or in film that fewer than 2% of the characters on TV are disabled, but 95% of the characters that are disabled on TV are actually played by non-disabled actors. So there's still this stigma out there where they don't always necessarily have the same opportunity as non-disabled folks. And that's just one example in terms of the arts and entertainment field. Oopsie. Hold on. How did that happen? All right. So many of you have probably heard about the medical and the social model as it relates to people with disabilities. And this is just a good graph to show the difference of the two. In the medical model, it's always from the point of view that something's wrong with the individual. They need to fix something in order to participate. The doctor knows better, that the individual may not be always able to make decisions. Professionals are in charge. So it's a very them position. Many terms in the disability community have been coined by non-disabled members of our society, where the social model puts the individual first. It's actually society needs to make some accommodations and changes in order for those with disabilities to fully participate. That the individual with a disability can make their own decisions, and that they have expertise. They don't need to be told. They can take charge of their own lives. So I think that we've moved over the years much more to a social model. And I think that's also important for us to know when communicating, speaking, marketing to people with disabilities. Language is very, very important and very fluid. As I mentioned, a lot of language about disability has been coined by non-disabled people, people in education, the medical field. But it's important that it's more than a diagnosis. Disability is a lived experience. It's a very rich and vibrant culture. It's intersectional, meaning that having a disability is just one element of an individual. It's not all of who they are. And again, it's a community that any one of us can join at any time, and more than likely, we will. So before I move on, I'm going to stop here and see if there's any comments or questions as relates to numbers, the importance of language, that medical social model that I shared with you. Anyone? Yes, Margot.
Hi, John. Thanks, first of all, for doing this. Yeah, as you were talking, I was wondering, and you're probably going to cover it, what describes disabled? I mean, I know someone in a wheelchair would be visually that way, but when I was reading some of the grant application information, it was telling me at the end of, I'm a theater person, at the end of my performance, or the end of my project, I'm supposed to identify those people in the audience. And I've done this before. I was going, what am I, without being intrusive, how do I identify them and tell the grant people how many attended? Because in some, so I think I'd really like to know how I'm supposed to do that.
Well, very good question. So by law, you're not able to ask anyone about their disability. So, but the way that you could identify, and you may not know, there's a lot of individuals that identify as somebody with a disability, but the disability is hidden. So somebody with hearing loss, for example, that's an invisible disability.
Yeah.
Unless they share with you that they have a hearing loss, unless they share with you that they would like an accommodation, such as a sign language interpreter, which of course, that would be a person that would identify as somebody who's deaf. There are individuals that identify as an individual with hearing loss, and they might benefit from a listening enhancement device, which I think many of you are familiar with, or they might benefit from captioning. They might ask you for some captioning. Then you would know that that is an individual with a disability. So in terms of being able to give a specific number of how many you're reaching that have a disability, there's really no way to, unless you're offering a specific sign language interpreted performance, or you're offering a captioned performance for open captioning, then you can determine, oh, so many people reserved for this particular service at this particular program. And then you can capture that. Certainly individuals with that have mobility issues, that use a walker, a wheelchair, they might self-identify. And of course, it's also, those are visible disabilities. And so you would be able to capture that. But just answering that question, I would just say, at this time, we don't know the specific numbers of individuals with disabilities that we benefit. But certainly if you're offering any programming, you can say, well, we had 6 people when we offered captioning, we had 6 people reserve for that particular service. You could capture it that way. Is that helpful?
Thank you, John.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Good, sure. Okay.
John, I don't see any other questions in the chat, so I think we're good to go.
Okay. So I just want to talk about this is so important. I know as you're completing your ADA plan for the county, my guess is there's one of you, more than likely, on this call that you are actually the one that's actually completing this. And I know you're small organizations, you probably, but my guess is you have boards of directors, you have volunteers or other colleagues that you work with. It's really important that they are involved and engaged and educated about accessibility as relates to your organization. It needs to be an organizational priority. And it really does start with your board of directors. That's where policy is developed. That's where financial resources are decided upon. So it's very, very important that it starts from the top and then filters all the way through your organization, your people who do your programming, if you do any education outreach, other management folks, who's doing your marketing, getting the word out about your programming and building your audiences. How about fundraising? You know, if anyone's writing grants for you, who's ever working with the public, box office, docents, information, who's ever picking up the phone for your organization and speaking to the public. If you happen to have at your venue even a security officers, those are all important departments and individuals that need to be aware and included in your ADA planning and education. So I cannot stress that enough, that not to do this work in a vacuum at your organization. It does need to engage everyone. So these are elements of a plan, and as I said, in a little while, we'll get to the document that you need to complete for the county. But it's important, there's going to be certain policies and procedures that you're going to need to think about at your organization. A grievance procedure, and this is a patron-facing grievance procedure. So if somebody at your organization, a patron, a visitor, makes a complaint, what are the steps that you're going to take to resolve the grievance? Hopefully you'll be able to take care of it right then and there as it happens. But other things might require more of a conversation. And what is that process? Is it a conversation with your board, your advisory board? And we'll talk about advisory boards in a moment. But what is that process? And when are you going to get back? What's the timeline to get back to the individual with a resolution? Employment or volunteers. how are we going to make sure that we're including and being open to making sure that all individuals can apply and participate in the organization, either as a staff member or as a volunteer. We're going to talk about programming is important to consider. How are you spreading the word about your programming and the accessible services that you're going to be offering? And then, of course, your facility. Or if you rent a facility for your programming, that's important too, because it is important to keep in mind you may not own your own facility and you do your programming in another venue. By the ADA law, if anyone was to make a complaint, both the venue and the program provider would be held accountable. So please, that's still a myth I think a lot of people have, is that the fact that they don't own their own venue, that a lot of this does not apply, and that's not true. So it's important that if you do go to another venue, you want to have, and we're going to talk about the importance of a letter of agreement or an access checklist. You're going to want to have a conversation with that venue and make sure that you understand what the accessible features are of the venue that you're bringing your programming to. And then, like with anything, there's goals and there's action steps in each of these areas. Who's going to be the person at your organization that's going to lead the way in these various areas? Do you require any financial resources to make some of these plans occur? And then what's your timeline? What year are you going to have some of these action steps completed?
John, I just wanted to interject here. We had a couple questions.
Yeah.
So Sandy was wondering if it's possible to ask in a survey if anyone self-identifies as disabled.
What I would suggest is that you say, if you're doing any kind of an audience survey, you could say, do you require any service or accommodation to fully participate in our programming? And then you could just put, i.e., sign interpretation, open captioning, barrier-free access, and just do it that. I would do it that way.
Great, thank you. And then a follow-up to that from Juan was, in the absence of the methods we've identified, like reserving access in advance, for example, they really have no basis for estimating the audience that's disabled. So any hints, which would be what you just suggested, right, with the audience survey, or do you think, is there any other?
You could do an audience survey, which I think is helpful. So you can get an idea. That would be a way to get an idea of what your current audience is, the makeup of your current audience. Also, if you're looking to offer a particular program, I would put something in maybe in your organization's newsletter if you have something. So for example, if you're going to offer something for those with vision loss, I would, of course, we're going to talk about the importance of giving yourself enough lead time to let people know that you're going to be offering something. You could put that in a newsletter, and you'll be able to start to see what the interest is in your audience when you start to put the word out about some of the services that you're looking to offer. And there are some things that you can do that are going to be beneficial to anyone. So for example, large print programs definitely will benefit somebody that identifies as somebody with some vision loss, but there's also individuals who just, like myself, who just loves large print. And that's something where you could just be proactive and offer it. And that would be, something where, as you see people taking advantage of that, there might be some individuals in there that are also going to be interested in some audio description. But I think to start the audience survey in phrasing that question the way I mentioned earlier, that's a really good first step to just get a sense of the makeup of your current audience and patrons.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Yeah. And I know you mentioned the newsletter, but something also very simple that we often forget is to put it on your website. Anytime you have any upcoming,
Yes.
Programming or opportunities or events, always put it right on the website, make it clear, make it large, have a contact that they're able to reach out to,
That's right.
if they do require any type of, additional services. Right?
Yep,
So,
that's right.
all right. Thank you, John.
Sure. So just, benefits of planning. I spoke about this a little bit when we began our time together this morning, but really keeping in mind that it is a journey. These things do not happen overnight. The county isn't expecting you to have everything done within a year. This is steps. Things take time. But the important thing is that you're developing a plan to keep your organization moving forward, that you are assessing and giving thought to the various areas of your organization as it relates to making them accessible. And it is a roadmap. And as you'll see, and you're probably familiar with the ADA plan worksheet that you're submitting to the county, it's a 3-year period. So I know a lot of plans of different things out there could be 5 years or more. I have always found that to be 5 years to be a little bit too much in the future, but 3 years is a long term, but yet short term to actually allow you to map out what your action steps are in terms of strengthening your organization's commitment to accessibility. And as I said, it does move, it helps when a new staff member, a new person entering your organization, a new volunteer, they actually now have a document that they can actually refer to. And it's important for you to assess this document periodically. So you're sending it to the county, it's going to get reviewed, you're going to get some comments back, but don't just let it sit until next year when you have to submit it again. It's really important that you use this planning tool over the course of the year moving forward. Don't let it just sit on the shelf because, oh, I did that. I don't really have to think about it until the next time I have to submit my grant. That's not the purpose of this. The purpose of this is to utilize this tool to help you, to make sure that you have some sort of roadmap to keep moving you forward. And it does definitely hold your organization. It holds you accountable. We can all say, oh, we want to be more accessible. We want as many people to come to and experience our programming. And then, okay, so it's a constant journey. So we have to hold ourselves accountable that we're continuing to assess and move our commitment in this area forward. And that's what's so beautiful about a planning document. So starting your plan, it's really good to assess your programming and your facility. We do have a self-assessment tool that we offer as part of our Cultural Access Network project at the Theater Alliance. It's a very big document, but I think it's really good for you to just take a glance at and not do it all in one sitting. You could certainly take it in sections, involve other colleagues at your organization, but it's broken down into facility, programming, marketing, and it really does ask some certain questions for you to consider in these various areas. And I think it's, so for example, if you're going to do an assessment of your facility, make sure that you're doing it with at least another person at your organization. Maybe there's somebody on your board or a committee that might be your facility building chair, if you have a building committee, for example, and also reach out to your county office that serves people with disabilities. They can be an amazing resource for all kinds of elements as it relates to accessibility. And they certainly could send somebody from their office and actually go through your venue or the venue in which you tour and present your programming. Really helpful. They'll be able to point out certain things that are working, but also certain things where it needs some improvement and attention. So that's just one area. Take a look at your programming and think about the various ways you can make programming accessible. You know, can you offer programming for those with hearing loss or vision loss? And we're going to talk about those specifically in a moment. Think about your marketing. As Gina just said, let people know that you are open to making a program accessible and having that available on your website. How are you connecting with the community in terms of people with disabilities? Again, the county office can be very helpful in helping spread the word about an accessible program or service that your organizations are offering. So give that thought too. How are we, if we're going to offer some accessible programming or we have some accommodations already in place, how are we letting the public know about it? What does our website look like? Do we have signage available at our organization? Do we put out any kind of target marketing to specific constituencies? So very, very important to just give each of these areas some thought. And then it's really important we know, okay, this is where we know we are, because you have to know where you are before you know where you're going, right? So really take some time to just give some assessment and utilize this document to just help you give some thought to where your organization currently stands in these various areas as it relates to accessibility. So we basically went through all of this. Think about the process. Who are you going to involve at your organization? Staff, trustees, other volunteers. The assessment is actually, as you give some assessment, write down some notes as it relates to your assessment process. That's going to help you in the future. And it also, again, if anybody comes in midstream, it's going to help them have a better understanding of the assessment process that your organization went through. And then jot down, as I thought about and went through our assessment, these were the main takeaways that we discovered. So some policies and practices for you to consider. You should have a board-approved policy statement regarding ADA compliance that indicates that your organization is committed to ensuring that it's going to make its programs and facilities accessible to everyone. So everyone can participate in your programming. And that board-approved policy is going to be really important. You can put that on your website. You could put that in your press releases. What that does is it really lets people know, wow, this statement tells me that this organization is really open to making sure anyone has access, that they can participate in the programming. I'm going to call them to make a request or inquire about an accommodation that I might need. So you're just letting folks know that you're dedicated. You want to ensure that anyone, regardless of a disability, will be able to participate in your programming. So that's what that policy statement, and we have various examples of policy statements on the Cultural Access Network website. An ADA coordinator, so you might be that person. So just think about who that person is at your organization. Again, it doesn't mean that that individual does everything. I really can't stress that enough. It is still an organizational effort, but there always does need to be a point person to keep the ball moving forward. Advisory boards are really helpful. Getting some individuals with disabilities in your community. You might even want to put another way to find out if anyone in your patron base has a disability. You might, in your newsletter that you send out to your constituent base, you might want to let folks know that you're committed to ensuring that your organization is accessible to everyone, and you're starting to form an access advisory board to guide and provide support as your organization continues to make its programs accessible to people with disabilities. And if anyone actually, and that you're going to ask for any volunteers that might be interested in serving on that advisory board, that's another wonderful way for people to actually come forward and self-identify and say, you know what, this is great that you're putting together this advisory board. I would like to help. So that's just another way of connecting with your patron base and determining who in your patron base might have a disability and be interested in serving on this advisory board. And then just keep as you put that advisory board together, just it's important, of course, with any committee or board, just, keep that list, their contact information, understand what type of disability does that person have. And all of you are here today, but it's really important that accessibility awareness training is offered to everybody at your organization. So I know for our organization and many that we work with, we recommend that it's offered maybe once a year or every other year because there's a lot of turnover. And again, you want to get everyone in your organization educated and aware of accessibility and the importance of that to your organization. So we're big believers in accessibility awareness training. So think about that, maybe building that into your plan of how often you might make that available. The Cultural Access Network certainly is some project that you could turn to assist you with that. Certainly, again, your county office that serves people with disabilities, they provide a big part of what they provide is education to county organizations because they're there to ensure that the quality of life of individuals with disabilities in Hudson County is improved. And so they're wonderful, again, a wonderful resource for education and support. And then think about resources for access. That's definitely another policy at your organization as you put together your budget, just to have maybe a line item on your operational budget. Or if you're doing a program, in your program budget, add a line item. Maybe in our program in the spring, we would like to offer captioning. So that's going to be a service. That's going to be somebody that you're going to need to contract to come in and do open captioning. So I'm going to put aside $500 for captioning in the spring, and I'm going to use the next several months to really market that to individuals that have hearing loss that would benefit from captioning. So that's just one example. But you want a lot of things you can do that are really just human resources that aren't necessarily financial resources. So all of these various policies we just talked about, those are wonderful steps moving you towards becoming an accessible organization. Policies, right? And really, they're readily achievable. You could probably formulate these policies and get them passed by your board within maybe 6 to 8 months. That's moving you forward in terms of becoming an accessible organization. And then, so some things are just human resources, right? But there are some things where you actually have to spend some dollars. When you have to contract anyone for sign interpretation or audio description or captioning, that's financial commitment, resources, and of course, anything for your building, any updates that you would need to do to your facility. But it's important to just discipline yourselves to have some resources set aside each year to strengthen accessibility at your organization. And again, if you have any kind of an emergency preparedness plan, if you do need to evacuate your building for any reason, what are the steps? It's important for all of us to think about that. And then always keeping in mind that if you do need to evacuate, keeping in mind that individuals with disabilities should be considered. You should have some kind of a plan for them. Again, your county office could be very helpful in providing you some guidance. And we talked about this a little bit, providing some feedback from people with disabilities with regards to your services. So if you're going to offer open captioning or sign interpreted, any kind of a service, it's really important to get the feedback from your patrons. You know, what worked? What could we have done better? How did you hear about this service? You know, was it our newsletter, our website? That's going to be really helpful. And then some of the earlier, we talked about doing just some kind of an audience patron survey, right? And in there, you're indicating if they would benefit from any access accommodations. You can actually just maybe have another question. If so, how could our organization be more welcoming or accessible to you? And then you could just have like an open, like a free text box. That's, again, a wonderful way to get feedback from your patrons, because I think there's a lot of individuals that attend our organizations that could benefit from the services, but we just haven't heard from them. So that's a great way to, those surveys are really wonderful ways to get that feedback. And just so you know, if somebody does have a service animal, by law, you do need to admit service animals. You should have a policy in place, but we have some information about service animals on our website. But I just think it's important to keep in mind that if somebody does ask to admit a service animal, that they are, by law, you need to allow them to do so. So just to keep that in mind. So when you think about policies, just think about, you know, your overall goal to get those policies done, different action steps. You know, we're going to work on our ADA organizational commitment policy and have that done by the end of this year. You know, so-and-so will write it, but of course, it's the who is definitely the board, because they're going to have to approve it. And it doesn't really require any resources except the human resources to actually develop the statement. And then you're going to put the statement up on your, another action item is that when the statement is passed, you're actually going to put that up on your website, put it in your press releases. Those are all action items to consider. So I'm going to stop here for a moment before we go to the next section and just see if there's any questions.
Mark, we do have a question from Maria. She wants to know if it will negatively affect our organization's application if some of the accessibility items don't apply to our events. For example, they host live music events outside on the plaza that are free to attend with no ticket sales, and people can come and go as they please.
That's a great question. And certain things are not always going to be applicable to the programming that you're offering. So just to give that some thought. So if there's music outside and it's mic'd, so if there's a sound system, you might want to investigate in terms of a listening enhancement device. So all listening enhancement devices they need to get plugged into a sound system. So you have to have a sound system available. So and they do offer those, you can make those available outside. So that might be one thing that you might want to consider. Also, if you're outside at a venue, you might want to have, if there's programs that you're distributing where there's like bios on the artists, musicians that are performing, you might want to have that program available in large print, for example. So if somebody with some vision loss is attending the music festival, that their program is in large print. So those are, different things to consider. How is the music festival in terms of accessibility, in terms of getting around the grounds of that festival? Is that accessible? So those are all things to consider there.
John, would you recommend that they reach out to the municipality or city that they're having the outside event and to get maybe a map of the accessibility on the streets, on the sidewalks, things like that?
Absolutely. So the more information you have, the better. So if somebody does call your organization is aware of the accessible features as well as any barriers that that individual might encounter. You can maybe put some of that information up on your website as well. I would also, with anything, especially outdoors, I would definitely ask an individual or two that might have a mobility disability to actually do a tour of the grounds with you. They will point out certain things that may not work, ways that you could actually get around certain barriers. Again, doing this work in a vacuum never works. Try to engage the constituency that you're looking to serve in all aspects of accessibility. And certainly anything with a venue, outdoor space, definitely engage somebody. Do a walkthrough, a site visit. And I think that's going to be very, very helpful.
Not just to interject, and I talked about this on the our webinar yesterday, the How to Apply webinar, and I think Maria, you were actually on it. Our office has we own a nice system of assistive listening devices that's available for borrowing, and Rosa, who is here with us, is the keeper of the assistive listening device system. So if you do have a need for it, you just need to contact us ahead of time, and I would give it like not like the day before to borrow our system, which it's a great thing, and we got a brand new one, so it's you can look like you're from the 80s, and it looks like a Walkman. So anybody on this call who knows what that is as old as I am. So anyway,
thank you so much.
Joe.
Thank you.
That's great.
And we'll go into that in a little bit later, all of the resources on the county side. So I know we had a question from Margot. Who at the county do you reach out to? Wonderful question. So we have a couple different resource areas that you can reach out to. So our Office on Inclusion and Accessibility would be the main office to reach out to for any type of questions on that. However, that's under the Department of Health and Human Services as well. And then we also have an Office on Aging, and we also have our office where Rosa has put together, and she put it in the link there, all of the ADA resources, which again, we'll go into all of that after John is completed his presentation, but we have so many resources on our end that we can help with respect to our nonprofit organizations with programming as well.
All great. So I know a lot of you are run by volunteers. You might have a volunteer form maybe that you ask people to maybe complete to get some information, just keeping in mind that you want to have forms in different formats. Or maybe some individuals, for one reason or another, may not be able to write and complete that form. They might ask you, could I just give you the information and you take it over the phone? So just to be open and flexible, to accept information in different formats when you're asking for information for an employee or a volunteer. Making sure when you have meetings, you're doing any kind of interviews, always meet in an accessible location. Okay, so you want to really take a look at, you might have office space, but you perform or provide your art programming in another venue. Just, this also, all of this accessibility also relates to your office, anywhere your organization conducts business, whether it's programming or otherwise. So really assess the areas of all of your operations. So if you're going to be doing an interview or a meeting with somebody, making sure that you're always meeting in an accessible location. And if you are putting out information for a staff position, for example, you do want to make sure there's a non-discrimination policy that includes people with disabilities. And we have a lot of samples of this up on the Cultural Access Network website. And then certainly if you're hiring anybody or even thinking about a volunteer position, just think about, sometimes you could bring somebody on and they could do all the tasks of a particular position, but maybe one or two they may not be able to complete. So to give you an example, I know an organization where they were looking for a receptionist, office manager, and this individual could do everything that in the job description. They could answer the phones, they could work and update the database on the computer, they could do all kinds of communication and research, answer the phone. The one thing in that job description that was kind of not quite right was the sorting of the mail. So this individual applying for the job was a wheelchair user, and the mailroom just was not really configured in the best way. So that was considered a marginal function for that position. So the organization just gave the sorting of the mail to somebody else in the organization because they felt the individual could do the essential functions of the job and do them very well. They were the best of all those that they interviewed. They were the best candidate for the essential functions of the job. So just to kind of give that thought, even your volunteers, just keeping in mind that not everyone can do everything that you might expect. So just be flexible and just say, these are the 4 or 5 things that you can do very well as a volunteer, but I'll have somebody else lift the boxes. Some people might not be able to lift boxes of a certain weight. So just to keep that in mind as you're communicating with a potential staff member or a volunteer for certain tasks. And then just giving some thought to that you are going to assess where you do interviews and make sure that they're accessible. You're going to look at your non-discrimination policy. You're going to look at your job descriptions for volunteers or for a particular office position, and then kind of set what are those action steps that you're going to undertake as it relates to employment and volunteer. We talked about the grievance procedures. We do have some examples of those up on the website, so they can be pretty straightforward. But again, keeping in mind, it's the grievance procedure for your visitors, your patrons, not a staff grievance. So take a look at those. What are the steps you're going to indicate? What's so wonderful about these, several years ago, there was an individual with a disability, a wheelchair user, that called an organization and inquired about parking for an outdoor music festival that they were attending. And this individual, who was a wheelchair user, could drive, their own van. That was fine. So they got the information and they arrived at the music festival and was asked to park on the grass. Well, wheelchairs and grass do not go together. And it was very, very frustrating. By the time they moved the van, try to find an appropriate parking spot, get the direct the individual to the viewing area for the music festival, the individual missed about 35 to 40 minutes of the concert, was not happy, and filed a complaint against the organization. So the organization actually did have a grievance procedure, and it showed the grievance procedure to the individual that made the complaint. They did take it very seriously and talk about how best to resolve it and move it so that it never happened again. They shared that information with the patron who made the complaint. They even showed that individual their ADA plan. So this individual was very impressed by the thought and commitment that this organization had towards access. It just was an unfortunate hiccup in communication, which happens. But because they were so impressed, they dropped the grievance, the complaint, and they actually joined that organization's advisory board to better assist and educate that organization as it relates to accessibility. So the grievance procedure, it's very important. Things do happen and people will make complaints. So it's just important that you have a procedure in place so that you can proactively handle that grievance and get it resolved and communicate appropriately with the patron who made the grievance. And then think about that. Maybe your action step is that you're going to be working on a grievance. You're going to research, work on a grievance procedure, and within the next 6 months, you're going to present it to the board for approval. And then you're going to put that up on the website. You're going to make everybody aware of the grievance procedure at the organization. And the resources is really human resources. It's not a financial commitment. I don't know if any of you do virtual programming, but if you do, just to keep it, think about, can you make any of your virtual programming accessible? I mean, right now, Zoom has made captioning is really actually pretty accurate now. It's been amazing what they've been able to do. So if you're holding a meeting or anything over Zoom, for example, you could offer captioning. You might be somebody on a virtual, if you're doing any kind of a virtual programming, they might ask for sign interpretation or audio description. So just to kind of keep that in mind, that you want to make your virtual programming and offering also accessible. And if you don't offer any virtual programming at all, then this may not be applicable to you. But if you do, you just want to think about how can you make that accessible. And then what are your plans if you do offer virtual programming? What are the steps you're going to take to ensure that your virtual programming is accessible? So I'm going to stop there again, just to take a little pause to see if there's any comments or questions on anything that we just went over. Grievance procedure, employment, volunteer forms.
Thank you, John. I don't see anything in the chat.
Okay, sounds good. So
So,
program offerings for those with hearing loss and those who are deaf. So just in terms of language, I just want to point out, you might have heard the term hearing impaired. So drop the word impaired. Language is a very fluid thing. It changes routinely. Even though you might hear some individuals refer to, say, hearing impaired, the community at large does prefer hearing loss, an individual with hearing loss. Impaired has a very negative connotation. So a lot of people prefer that you just drop it. So hearing loss. And then those who are deaf, deaf, of course, is individuals that communicate through sign language. They identify as somebody who's deaf. they don't identify as somebody with hearing loss. So again, when you're marketing, when you're communicating with people, language is very, very important. So I just wanted to point that out because those terms are going to be useful to you when you're writing a press release or putting something up on your website. You want to make sure you're using the right terminology. So,
John.
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I always used as a reference the etiquette book by United Spinal. Is that still a good resource?
Yes, there's a lot of resources out there around language, what to use, what not to use. Language does change pretty frequently. It feels like every year or so there's a new term or a slightly different term to use. But I think that I am familiar with that one, and I think it's fine. Yeah. Yeah, if you put a link there,
I'll put a link to it. Yeah, it's disability
yeah.
etiquette. I have always found it to be a handy reference and recommended it to our grantees. So I'll put it in the chat. Thanks. I'll shut up now.
No worries. So as Joe mentioned earlier, there's assisted listening devices that you can borrow from the county to amplify what's happening on stage, music, a lecture. To keep that in mind. Looping technology you might be familiar with, where a lot of new construction now, they're actually looping. There's actually a magnetic field that is actually being added into rooms and theaters and museums. So somebody with a T-coil on their hearing aid or a cochlear implant, they turn the T-coil on, the T-switch, and because of the magnetic field in the room, things are amplified. They don't need any hardware. So looping is becoming a much more and more preferred technology for those with hearing loss. And it's becoming more and more common that new construction is adding looping technology in. Of course, sign language interpretation for your performances, a tour, a lecture for those individuals who are deaf, that would require resources. So you do need to pay interpreters. So to keep that in mind, the New Jersey Division of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, you can reach out to them in terms of getting a list of New Jersey interpreters. Also, your county office, again, might have interpreters on their roster list. So that would probably be my first step, is to contact your county for any sign language interpreters. Open and closed captioning. So we're all familiar with closed captioning on our television sets at home, but there's open captioning that can be offered for those with hearing loss. They may not fully benefit from the listening enhancement systems, but they benefit from the captioning. And again, you would probably need to secure a contractor to do the captioning for you. So there would be some financial resources there. But also a lot of individuals with hearing loss, they might ask for information in advance just to familiarize themselves with the program that's being offered. A synopsis of the script or bios of the artists. That's all going to be really helpful. You might even want to put those up on your website, because most individuals with disabilities really rely on websites for information. So that could be another area where you could offer information in advance. And printed self-guided tours, that's for galleries, museums. That's a very popular item where it kind of goes with hearing loss, just in order for them to get around the museum or the gallery. Sometimes those are asked for, very helpful, where they may not participate in a voiced guided tour. The printed guided tour provides some independence, and that might be something that might be requested. And then, so think about these and how these relate to your programming. Again, things don't happen every night, overnight. Maybe you're going to say, you know what? I really would love to offer the assisted listening devices. I'm going to make that available at an event in November, let's just say. But I'm going to start to market it now. And I'm going to make sure when I market it, it's on our website. We do a press release. So often people will offer some accessible programming and it's very late. They don't give themselves a very long runway to market it. And then they wonder why no one shows up. Because I'll go on their website and I'm like, well, I don't see anything. When did you send out the press release? I don't see an international access symbol being used. So you can offer something, but if nobody knows about it and you're not giving them enough time to know about it, you more than likely will not get an audience. So offering a service is great, but if you don't market it and get people to take advantage of the service, it's a lot of effort for nothing, because it's not really benefiting anybody. So the marketing, which we'll get to in a moment, is really, really essential. But think about all these various services and what you could offer. Again, don't feel you're going to take everything on overnight. You're going to do it maybe in small steps. I'm going to try I'm going to try these assisted listening devices at an event 4 or 5 months from now. I'm going to see, okay, I get an audience. Now I know I'm getting a few people who benefited from that. I'm going to do that for each of our events because I see an audience is coming. I'm going to offer captioning for something maybe in the spring or next fall. And I'm going to give myself time to get the resources for the captioner, but also to promote it. So, and then as you give that thought, you're going to give yourself, again, think about what the overall goal is that you, of course, want to increase your audience and patrons that have hearing loss or who are deaf. And these are the steps that you're going to do it. And there's definitely some resources that are going to be involved there. Any questions on services for those with hearing loss or who are deaf?
Don, I don't see any questions in the chat.
Okay.
So I think we're good to go.
And some program offerings for those who with vision loss. Audio description you might have heard of, which is just a description of, if it's a play, it's a description of what's happening on stage, for example. And they actually hear the description through a headset. That's something museums and galleries offer descriptions where they're just describing various elements of the art that's exhibited at the gallery or the museum. Sensory seminars in a theater, it's feeling some props and costumes of the production. In a museum, it might be a tactile touch tour where they're feeling pieces of sculpture or raised line drawings, for example. That's another way to benefit those with vision loss. Braille materials and large print, programs, Braille labels on art exhibits, pieces of art at a museum that display signage. Braille is not, it still will be asked for, but it's a very small percentage of the blind community, about 10%. Typically, it's very, very difficult language to read. So you won't get that too often, but you might get a request for something in Braille. Large print, however, is definitely something that would benefit anyone with vision loss or anyone probably within your patron base. and large print is 14 point or greater, though I would say 16 point or greater. 14 point, if you look at it, it's not really all that large. So I would suggest maybe going up to 16. Programs of bios. If you're doing a playbill, for example, and you have like ads in there from local businesses, you don't need to put the ads in a large print program. It's just the basics, the basic information about the event that you're presenting, bios on the artists. If it's a play, the scene, act 1, act 2, it's all that specific information, but you could just take out all of the ads. You could do those things on your copier machine or just take it to a local Staples and they could enlarge them for you. And again, the information up online about your events, very, very helpful to people with vision loss as well. A lot of individuals with disabilities like to read about the event, get familiar before they actually attend. And of course, in museums, they do a lot of work with the digital media through smartphones and different recordings where it's describing different pieces within the museum. So that's another accommodation primarily for visual arts organizations. Any questions there? And again, just thinking about your art, the programs that you offer, what could you do to make it more accessible to those with vision loss?
Hey, John, just well, I'm just thinking, and this is so awesome. You just touched on it, but like I like this is a lot for everyone to take in.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned it, but can you just talk about like incrementalism, or not incremental, but just like how that you don't have to bite off like every single thing,
right?
Right off the bat. Like
that's
it's
right.
I just want you to stress that, because I know some people are quaking in their boots when they hear all this stuff.
Yeah, it is a lot of information. These are things for you to consider. But again, I'm just going to reiterate that it's definitely a journey. It's not going to happen overnight. And just set yourself up to do can I do 1 or 2 things within the next year or so to be accessible to those with vision loss, to be accessible to those with hearing loss. Maybe in the next year or so, it's just making sure you get those assisted listening devices from the county. And you build and you work and gain an audience that's going to utilize those listening enhancement devices. Maybe this year, you're going to get all your policies set at your organization within this year. Also give yourself enough of a runway too. But just take a look, and you'll get this PowerPoint in addition to the recording. You'll also get the PowerPoint so you can refer to it. But just take a look and just see what is possible at your organization, and just say, oh, I'd like to do that, but that's going to be in year 2 or year 3. In year 1 now, I'm going to just create myself a good foundation with a few things, and then I can build upon it in year 2 and year 3. So it's just really important. Don't feel you have to do everything all at once, because you want to do whatever you do, you want it to be the highest standards possible. So none of us want to do anything kind of half-baked. We want everything to provide any kind of a service at the fullest, at the highest standard. And so don't rush anything. So that's what my advice.
Thank you, John. And thanks, Joe, for making that point. I know it does seem like a lot of information. As John mentioned, you will get this PowerPoint, so you can constantly go back to it and review and look at what, your goals are.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see any other questions.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No worries. So you can also think about anything that you could do to offer programming for those with cognitive disabilities. Individuals on the autism spectrum, not mandatory, but it is something to give some thought to. So again, you might just utilize the next year or 2, just sort of researching and learning a little bit more about that. Maybe if there's many organizations out there that serve families of folks on the spectrum. You could just certainly just do some, in the next couple of years, you're just going to do some research about this. And maybe in year 3, you might offer an art experience for individuals on the spectrum. We have several organizations that offer, a lot of arts groups do offer this, several museums, a few theaters. But it took a while, and they used the first year or 2 just to get to research and get the knowledge. So I just wanted to put that thought out there. Your marketing. So a lot of things here, you want to just look at your website. You want to make sure that at least it has kind of the basic accessibility features, that there's contrast. It's not navy blue print, font on a dark green background. Graphically might look interesting, but it's definitely not accessible. You want to make sure that there's adjustable type size, that you have alt text for the images that are on your website. So just kind of, it really would be helpful to have a couple of people, especially those from the vision loss community, to take a look at your website. They could provide probably a lot of wonderful feedback in terms of what's working and what isn't on your website. Your policy statements around accessibility, that commitment statement, you want to put that up there on your website. And you also want to make sure all of your programs, anything that you're offering in terms of accommodations and services, make sure that you're listing those on your website. Who are you going to call if anybody needs an accommodation and wants to say, oh, I would love to attend your event, but I'm going to need do you offer listing enhancement? I would like that. Who are they going to contact at your organization to make that request? So make sure that all that information is available on your website and that it's easy to find, not 4, 5, 6 clicks, because they definitely will not contact you. So just make sure that it's really a couple of clicks at the most, and they're learning about your accessible offerings and who to contact. And also use the international access symbol as well.
I just wanted to inject for a minute, John, on that. I just wanted to let everybody know that I am the coordinator for Hudson County. So if there's anything that you're not sure about or you want to inquire, you can definitely come, give me a call and I can research that for you if we don't already have it available, or, find something. For instance, we had someone who just needed, wheelchair, transport from the street into the venue for one of the events last year, and we were able to secure that with the Hudson County. So I just want to let you know that those services are there too, and you can reach out to me for that in case. And if you have any questions, if we can provide that for your events as well.
And if you do have seating, so if you sell tickets like for a theater, you should have your seating diagram up on your website, and also show, by law, you do need to have some wheelchair locations. And on that seating diagram, by law, you do need to indicate where those wheelchair seats are. So that's important to keep in mind. Marketing, so all of your marketing materials, can you make those available in different formats? So if you have brochures, can you make sure some of them might be in large print if somebody asks? But again, more things that you can put up on the website, the better. Most individuals with disabilities, the very first thing that they learn about what's going on in their community is after word of mouth, because word of mouth is number 1, is websites. So just to keep that in mind. So the more information you put up on your website, the better. Those international access symbols, you do want to make sure that you have those available, that you're putting them up on your website in any marketing materials. That indicates to somebody with a disability that they can inquire, that when they see that captioning symbol, or they see the wheelchair symbol, it indicates, oh, there's something there for me. So those access symbols are very important. If you do have a wheelchair symbol, but you might have a little barrier at your facility, you want to have a disclaimer next to the wheelchair symbol that just says, a majority of our facility is barrier free. Please please contact our organization before your visit, something along those lines. What that says to somebody who has a mobility disability is, wow, thank you. I see that they're saying that most of their venue is accessible, but they're telling me that there's definitely a little barrier that I should be aware of, and they're going to call. So again, just make sure who's answering the phone, that they have the information, and that's very, very helpful. What's very frustrating is when they see an access symbol with the wheelchair, or they call a venue, oh yes, we're barrier free, no problem. And then they get there and there's a little step at the front door. That does not make anyone happy. So again, just the more communication and information you can provide, the better. If somebody does want to request assisted listening devices, sign interpretation, you might want to just have an advanced notification policy. We recommend a couple of weeks. So if your program is, the middle of September, by September 1st, if they could let you know of what their accommodation is, that would be appropriate, because you can certainly find an interpreter or captioning within 2 weeks. If they call you a couple of days before, you certainly never say no. You can certainly try to accommodate them, but it more than likely will be much more challenging. So just to protect yourself, but also to give guidance to the public, you would like folks, if they need, if they're interested in a service where you need to actually contract an outside vendor, the 2 weeks would be helpful. Again, if you have an advisory board, they're going to be very helpful in spreading the word about your commitment to access and what programs you're going to be offering. Your target marketing, the county office, again, could be really helpful in helping you get the word out. And I think there's other resources of other county and state agencies that can help spread the word about what you're offering. And if you do tour, as I mentioned earlier, to other facilities, you just need to be familiar of what accessible features they have. Because if anybody makes a phone call and they ask you, you should be familiar of the venues in which you're presenting your programming. And again, all of this doesn't have to be done overnight, but just kind of taking a look at each piece and just see what you could easily implement this year, what could we possibly start to implement next year, and so forth. And I'm not going to go through all of this, but as you go through these sections, you really do want to walk through your venue or the venues in which you're presenting programming, and just get really familiar with the parking, public transportation, the entrance to the facility, the performance area, the restrooms. All of those things are going to be really important. And have somebody with a mobility impairment walk through the venue with you. It's going to be very, very helpful. And again, your county office, they're more than happy to help to send somebody to assist you. We've also done this through the Cultural Access Network. We have a wonderful volunteer committee that works with us. We've done that at times for some organizations. So we're a resource as well. But these just will give you things for you to give some thought to, the doors, if you have different levels, do you have an elevator or a ramp, restrooms, So rather than going through every one, these are just different features of a facility for you to take some time to assess and see what works, but also where you might need to make some adjustments. So that's the Cultural Access Network. We have wonderful resources. You can go to our website, and I know Rosa has that information. Wonderful resources there. We do every once a month, starting in December, we do Access Thursday roundtables, the first Thursday of the month, and always topics of great interest around accessibility. There are peer-to-peer networking opportunities. So we invite you to all of those. The schedule is just about to go up on the website next week for the whole year. So you'll be able to see those. So please take a look at those, and you can certainly go on the website and register right there. We also archive previous roundtables that we've done. So if there's any topics there that might be of interest, you can always listen to those archived recordings. And that's me. So don't ever hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. If I don't know the answer, I more than likely know somebody who does. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Great,
So
thank you so much, John.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know it's a lot of
Appreciate it.
information, so don't fall off your chair. But just to always keep in mind, nothing happens overnight. I can take small steps. That's what's so nice about a plan, is it's over a 3-year period. And maybe the first year is just research and my policies and learning, speaking to Rosa about what resources are available. How do I get assisted listening enhancement device? That could be like your first year. And then, taking a look at your website and seeing what steps you could do to make that improved. Finding somebody from the county who's going to walk through your venue. That could all be just in year 1. Then, you've done that, you're going to move on to the next, some plans that you have for year 2. So really don't do it alone. Find other folks at your organization to work with you. So please keep that. This is
Thank
not
you, John.
to be done in a vacuum. Yep.
I just wanted to interject really quickly. I don't want people to leave just yet, because we have the most important thing, right, for the application is the ADA plan. That's why we're here. So if we can just, Rosa, can you just pull up the ADA plan briefly so everybody could take a quick look at it?
Yes, absolutely.
And we'll walk through that, and then we'll go into the resources after. So it's just a chart. And John was kind enough to kind of review it. We've updated the chart from previous years. So it should be pretty straightforward. And again, it's the journey, not the destination, right? So we're looking at the 3 years, upcoming, and, what you're able to include. Again, the more information, the better. And as John mentioned, there's so many simple little tips that you can do throughout, the course of the year to, be more accessible to all. So we're just pull that up. That's okay.
It's taken a little while here.
Or I can bring it up. Rosa.
I think it's coming up now.
Here we go.
Oh,
perfect.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Great. So Joe, do you want to take the chart, or you want John?
I mean, I can walk through it if you like, because a lot of it is
Sorry, folks.
Yeah,
John.
a lot of it is reflected on what we just went over. So
Beautiful.
Think about your policies. Go to that organizational policy and just And of course, this is where your board would need to be in, because all policies get voted on by the board. So what's your, maybe you have some policies already established. So what's your current status? We have this policy and this policy, and we're going to be working on these two policies. Who's doing that at the organization? And then over the next few years, these are what we're going to be working on. I would say with policies, a year or so, because if I see somebody say policies and they're not going to get to it for 3 years, the review committee is going to flag that. So again, policies are kind of readily achievable things that could easily be done within a year. So just to kind of keep that in mind. And if you have an ADA coordinator, who is that person? The title, is it a volunteer? Maybe that ADA you're in between ADA coordinators. So let us know what your status is. And some things might be, ongoing. The cost and the resource column, that's if there's any output of funds. And that would be especially for anyone you need to contract. A lot of these things are just human resources. There's not a direct financial cost. How about that grievance procedure? Do you have one? Was it developed? When was it adopted by your board? Or maybe you're in the process of developing one, and that's going to be done in 2025, for example. And the self-assessment, that's, you've started it. You're going to be, these are the folks at my organization that are going to work with me on the self-assessment. You're going to review, you're going to go back to the self-assessment and work on it. Every couple of years, you're going to have a meeting with your committee, your board, to look at the self-assessment and keep checking in with it. So talk about your process of your self-assessment tool. And that would probably be an ongoing thing, 25, 26, 27. You're going to take it probably in small sections. But I would talk about, you've just sort of assessed, maybe you didn't use the survey specifically, but if you just sort of assessed and thought about your programming in these different, and your organization in these different areas, just in the current status, just talk a little bit. It doesn't have to be War and Peace, but just a couple of sentences that just kind of states, these are the steps that we're taking to assess our organization and our programs. That's all. The committee just wants to see that you understand assessment and its importance to your work and making a plan. And then under your programs and services, how about your various publications and website? What things are accessible? What things are you working on? Who's doing that? Maybe it's a committee member that's responsible for marketing. These are the few things that we're going to work on over the next 3 years as it relates to our website. Are we putting up policies up on the website? Now, again, some of these might, if you're doing any work on your website, maybe you're getting a website review and an update. More than likely, there might be some financial resources that you're going to need to identify for that. Putting up those access symbols, putting those up on your website. Have you done that, or what's your plan to make sure those go up? Are you offering some large print programs or Braille? And what's the current status? What's your plan? Again, who's going to be doing that with you, for you? Again, assisted listening, maybe for 2025, you're going to just contact Rosa and find out the procedures for reserving assisted listening devices at the county. So put that in there. And then you're going to offer your first assisted listening to have the devices offered at your performance the end of 2025 or early 2026. I mean, put in that information. Think about captioning. When could you maybe you're going to research captioning and think about what What's the process to offer a caption service? What's the pricing? So that's all going to be in 2025. And then maybe in 2026, you're actually going to offer a captioned event. Tactile, can you have anything offered if you're a visual arts organization? Is there anything that you can think about in terms of offering a tactile experience? If you're a museum, how about your labels? Can you make those in different font sizes? Can you have them available in Braille? Sign language interpretation, is that applicable to your organization? And also, if you feel anything isn't applicable for a reason, in the current status box, just write not applicable and then explain why it's not applicable. So this way, when the panel reviews it, they'll know, oh, that makes sense that this isn't applicable. But if you just write not applicable, that the panelists might put a red flag there. So just to be as specific as you can. Maybe there's
Thank you, John. Yeah, that's very important. We see that a lot. So if you're going to put NA, please explain why. And the other thing that we see a lot too is don't copy and paste. Don't copy and paste the columns, put some thought into this, and give an explanation where you can for what's required.
Mm-hmm. And then maybe there's some other programming that you're offering. Maybe you are offering something for those on the spectrum, and that isn't listed in this in these individual boxes. So anything else that you're doing program-wise for access, that would be utilize that other section for that. And then I'm not going to go through everything, but these are all the elements of your facility. So this would be really helpful for you to go through your facility with somebody. These are the things that are accessible. Oh, these are the things that aren't. And maybe by 25, we're going to start to research and gain, see where we could secure some funding. And then we're going to make some changes to the facility in 26 and 27. So that this really is just definitely a walkthrough. Now, for example, if you do not own your own facility, then talk about that and how are you working with the venues that you do tour to. So that's important. So then this is all the exterior parts. So this is like your parking area. How about your, do you have public transportation? Is it easy if somebody's with a disability? How easy it is to get from the public transportation drop off to your venue.
Cool. Thank you so much, John.
Sure.
So again, this is your kind of meat and potatoes on the ADA accessibility portion of the application. So please, be as thorough as possible. Again, I know you've received so much information today, so much very important information, but take your time with it. We're here. We wouldn't require or ask this of you if we weren't doing it ourselves. We're here to be a resource. We're here to guide you and assist. And so with the resources, obviously we have, like I mentioned earlier, the Office of Inclusion and Accessibility under the Department of Health and Human Services, Office on Aging, and we are the Office of Cultural Heritage Affairs, Tourism Development, with additional ADA resources and components. So Rosa had the screen up earlier. So all of the resources that we put up here are specific to you, to all of our amazing nonprofit organizations and programming. As Joe mentioned earlier, we have an incredible assistive listening device. And as John mentioned, please reach out. It's free. We have it here. So ask us for it. We would love to give it to you for any type of programming you have coming up. We've also Rosa does an amazing job with updating the vendors that we work with for any type of accessibility requests and resources, and ask us about it too. We are able to supplement if there is a fee attached to it. Let us know. Maybe we can help you. We can guide you and and potentially supplement the costs of that for you, because we want to ensure that everybody has access to your amazing programs and events and facilities. So all of that is there.
Can I just add one thing?
Sure.
First of all, thank you, John, and thank you, Gina and Rosa. Just with regard to the organizational plan, we just went through a couple things. One, it's totally fillable. It's a PDF. You can do it right. So there should be no formatting issues or problems filling it out. That's number one. And number two is, I can't say this enough, and John said it. Like, Rome wasn't built in a day. So we're not looking, or the ADA panel is not looking for you to have like all these things done. What they want to see is like, are you addressing it? Are you making progress, or do you have plans to make progress? So it's not like you have to check out yes for everything, or done. It's really that you are cognizant of these issues and that you have a plan to address them. That's pretty much my 2 cents. So I just want to thank everybody, and I'll shut up now.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you so much, everybody. Any other last minute? I want to be conscious of time. I know it's been a while. So if anybody has any questions, let us know. If not, again, we're always here. A huge thank you to John. Thank you for your time and all of your dedication in the work that you do. And not only for us, but for the entire state of New Jersey. And we are so happy to be able to work with you, partner with you on this.
Thank you. Same. Good to be with everybody.
Great. Well, everybody have a wonderful rest of the day and week, and we will be in touch soon. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.